I'm Theo.
And I'm Juliet.
And this is Apologies Accepted.
We offer an entertaining look at some of the big issues in history by examining public apologies of the famous and infamous.
We're looking at politicians, serial killers, actors, and you.
Send us a public apology you would like to make, and we'll read it on the air and give you a chance to redeem yourself, or just get some guilt off your shoulders.
We're here for you. Once a week, maybe more if you're really, really sorry.
Hi, everybody. This is Apologies Accepted, the podcast. Yay! And I'm not Theo.
And I'm not Juliet.
And I want to know, as I want to know every week, what's shakin' bacon?
In Baconland, what is going on? Well, work, which is always great. I don't know if you've ever heard about working, but it's a thing you have to do Monday through Friday. Yes. Let's see. Work, and then, as I mentioned, we bought a house, and so all the things that go with that. Getting a...
Congratulations.
Thank you. On one hand, thank you, and then on the other hand, oh God, there's so much responsibility. You're just like so grown up the minute that happens.
Well, you've had a house before. You've been grown up before.
I know, but I've fallen back into the wonderful land of renting, which is a double-edged sword, because on one hand, the roof needs to be replaced. Not my problem. But on the other hand, it rained and the waters made my mattress wet. And when are you going to fix the roof? We'll fix it when we fix it. Mm-hmm. So, there are curses that come with renting. Let's see. And then anything. Yes. And then something fun. So, my favorite holiday is swiftly approaching, which is Halloween.
Yay.
And yay. I'm starting to feel that I'd like a good ghost story feeling,
Ooh.
I'd like to curl up with a big blanket and read a really good ghost story or watch it. So last night I watched The Pope's Exorcist by Netflix.
I heard something about that. I couldn't figure out if that was the name of a movie or what that was, The Pope's Exorcist. So what's going on there?
It is the name of a movie. It is the name of a very dumb movie. And and I will say biggest chicken on the planet, totally afraid of everything. There's a ghost right over there. Oh my God. I'm always scared, right? I live in perpetual fear of ghost and the devil, right? When I'm alone. Yes.
Of course, as one does.
Of course. That's it. The only time they're going to get me is when there's nobody there to protect me.
Yeah.
So, very terrified all the time of supernatural bullshit happening to me, right? Fine. However, there is an exception, a carve-out, and that is movies about exorcisms.
Really?
I know why. The scariest movie of all time to me was The Exorcist. All I had to do was think of that scene where her head turns around.
Uh-huh.
Just think of it. And I'm up until 3 a.m.
Oh, no.
Right? When I'm alone, that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Fine. Scary. But I got stoned once with some friends and... all right, I have to add this background color. Sorry. Brag. We were in Amsterdam on a houseboat. And
nice.
It was cool. It was a really cool experience. But because we were in Amsterdam and that's in a different country, internet, little wonky, getting videos hard. So the house had a DVD of The Exorcist. And that's what we watched. Because they also had a giant, 7-foot TV projection thing, film cameras on the roof, and that shoots what you're watching onto a wall.
Oh, fun.
Right. So, okay, great. Big production. Right. But there was anyway, it doesn't matter. The Exorcist felt like the only choice. Also, as I mentioned, we were stoned. So great. Put it in. And I was like, okay, I'm here with my two really dear friends. If I get scared, they will hold my hand. It'll be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Right. We laughed throughout the entire film, right? It just was so funny to us. And all of us had a history with The Exorcist, and we were all afraid of it, right? Of the movie, and and I think everybody may have also been raised Catholic, now that I think about it. Yeah. So even more terrifying because we're Catholics. And so, so funny. And now whenever I see an Exorcist film, what I note is how much of the original film they reference and try and rip off. And so this movie did that very same thing.
I see.
It's like, there's that one scene where the little girl says something like, "Your mother sucks cocks in hell." Right. And that's so scary in the film. And so in this film, a little boy is possessed and he says something along those same lines, but he takes it another level, and I'm not going to repeat it because I don't know how a child actor was allowed to say this on film. Right. Because he uses the F. I could say fuck. "I am going to fuck you," is what the kid says to the priest, right? And then he says something even beyond that. Like, I was like, ooh. Oh, that's it. Ooh. Oh, but then it was like, oh, you know what they're trying to do? They're taking your mother sucks cocks in hell and just yes-anding it, just making it worse. Yeah. And so it didn't work. And I laughed. That's my card out.
I'm surprised you didn't laugh at the original one. I thought it was funny, but
it's funny now, but no, it was terrifying.
Not the first time you saw it, no.
No, not the fifth time I saw it. Like, I've seen The Exorcist multiple times over the year and always terrified. Right.
That's funny.
Not anymore. Come at me, Linda Blair. What about you? So that's it. I do not recommend The Pope's Exorcist. It was stupid, and it just... good try, guys. What about you? What's shaking bacon?
Not a whole lot. Haven't done very much this week except work, and precious little of that, frankly. I, however, am going this coming weekend to the Wildflower Boutique Motel, which sounds both good and not good. We'll find out. It was the only place I could get reservations at, basically, in Point Arena, which is near a lighthouse that Brent wanted to go check out. So we're going there for the weekend. And then the weekend after that, I go to Palm Springs for my uncle's memorial service. So I'll be there for that weekend. And then after that, I go to New Mexico for a couple of weeks and come back and go to Stockholm. So, and then after that, I go to Joshua Tree, and then after that, I go to New York. So I'll be traveling a little bit over the next couple of months, which is excellent. Good news. I'm looking forward to it very much.
I am so super jealous.
You could travel too if you wanted to.
No, I have to work.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. My travel comes with the downside of my not having a job for a while. Since my job ends in early October, then I need to start looking for another job. But I'm sure it will be fine, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about it at all. Not me.
I wouldn't worry about it for 1 second. As a matter of fact, I would quit now and just laugh.
That's right. I don't need the severance pay. I'm just going to quit now.
Yeah, just tell those people to keep that filthy money and they can go away.
I don't need your money. I'm just going to quit now for no reason. Yay. So speaking of nothing in particular, this week we have, we're going to be talking about Xuxa. Do you remember Xuxa? You were around in the 80s and 90s, so you may have come across her in your time as a person existing in the 80s and 90s. Did you?
Would you believe never,
really?
ever have I heard of this person or this character?
I would have thought you had.
Never, ever. And I was doing some research, and when I got to her Wikipedia page, I was like, how are you the 37th most influential woman in the world? Yeah. And I have never heard your name.
Well, I think the only time I heard of her was when she started her show in the U.S. So she had a national children's show in Brazil that started in 1986 that was on 6 mornings a week, and it made her Brazil's biggest TV star with over 100 million viewers daily at the peak of the show, which is like half of Brazil. Brazil is like 200 million people. And then the show had a cast of apparently a lot of teenage backup dancers who were, interestingly enough, all white. I think that Brazil has about 55% of the country being multiracial or people of color. So it's interesting that her backup dancers were all white. And she, of course, was white as well. And so building on her television success, and she started to sing, so she got multiple best-selling albums. She was then a movie star, and she actually owned an amusement park, World of Xuxa, which, I mean, you've got to be something if you've got your own amusement park. I don't
Hi,
know
Dolly
if anybody,
Parton.
Dolly Parton. Other than Dolly Parton, I don't know of anybody else who has their own amusement park. Do you? I don't think so.
Mickey Mouse, but I mean, not really.
Yeah. Not a real person.
Oh, well,
I'm sorry to tell you.
Michael Jackson had his own private
kind of
Neverland, sort of.
Yeah.
But they're few and far between.
Yes. Absolutely. And she also dated Pele Senna, the race car driver, who has his own documentary, which I recommend very highly if you haven't seen it. And she also dated John F. Kennedy Jr. And speaking of Michael Jackson, she has claimed that Michael Jackson proposed to her and asked her to have his children. But she said no, obviously. I would not be surprised if that were true, because I guess he was looking at some point for a blonde woman to have his children.
We're going to say that Tom Cruise and Michael Jackson definitely both were doing the wife shopping thing through their publicist, where it was like the publicist came up to the woman and said, "Have you ever thought about marriage to Michael Jackson?"
What would you say to something like that? You know? What a weird question.
I would be like, are we going to have sex or can we do this clinically?
Yeah, exactly. Creepy. I don't want to go there. Let's move on.
Oh, and money also. Before,
oh, yeah, how much?
Yeah, right. Before the syringes are pulled out, listen, I need money. A lot of it.
We
it's
need to
mine.
talk about the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Xuxa also had her own comic books. She had her own clothing line, and she had her own dolls. And of course, she was compared to Barbie for her look because she was thin, she had long legs, she had blonde hair and blue eyes. And for her, I guess, her empire, she was compared to Madonna. So maybe she was compared to called the Brazilian Madonna, probably. Somebody probably called her that. And she did, as I mentioned, she did have an American TV show in 1993, but she had a hard time speaking English, and she also had a really tough schedule because I think she was still doing her 6-day-a-week morning show in Brazil at the time of the American show. So she had a hard time with that, and the show was not successful. I don't know how long it went on for, but I don't think a year. So, but that's the first time I ever heard of her.
Did you see it? I mean, did it enter your...
I did not. I don't think I saw it. I don't remember, but I don't think I saw it. I remember hearing about her and thinking about her, but not actually watching the show. So, obviously you didn't, since you didn't hear about her.
Well, we were friends at the time, and you didn't tell me.
I mean, I might have told you. This seems like the sort of thing I would have told you about. So maybe we just both don't remember.
Okay, maybe I was president of the Xuxa fan club. Like, Juliet told me about this great show, everybody. But no, you were selfishly keeping Xuxa all to yourself, and that's why her show failed in the U.S.
Seems so weird that I would not mention it, but I don't know. Who knows?
Well, it's not like we would have had a massive conversation. Well, we might have actually had a massive conversation about it.
You never know. So during her fame in the 80s and 90s in Brazil, there was an economic expansion in Brazil which coincided with the world's highest plastic surgery rates. But Brazil is now looking to people to more closely represent its diversity for its cultural role models. And there's a documentary series out now about Xuxa called Xuxa the Documentary that has started discussion of diversity, beauty standards, and sexualization in relation to Xuxa. I did not track down the documentary. I assumed it's in Portuguese or Spanish.
I tried. So it's hard.
Is it? I figured it probably would be something that would be hard to find in the U.S. So I have not watched it. But yeah, so like I mentioned, Brazil is a fairly diverse country with about 55% of the country being multiracial or people of color. And the documentary raises questions about whether a thin blonde white woman was an appropriate idol. I think even at the time there were some questions about that. There was a New York Times article from the 90s that addressed the issue. Which I did not go back to read, but I read about. And the internet has also discussed Xuxa's worst television moments. For example, one time she said her viewers preferred blonde children. Another time she wore an indigenous headdress. And another time she told a girl that she lost a contest on the show because she ate too many fries. So this is all the glory of the 80s and 90s here, especially
totally.
The 90s when everyone was into very thin people and not seeing a problem for addressing somebody's weight.
And making children feel shitty, too. I mean, don't forget the national pastime.
Oh, my God. Xuxa said of the beauty standard that she represented for Brazilian youth that she, quote, didn't see it badly. Today we know that it is wrong. And in the documentary series, she blames her show's problems on her boss and the culture of the time. But in her interview with the New York Times, which was done in August, she assumed more responsibility and lamented the market may have left on young viewers who don't look like her. God, what trauma I put in the heads of some children, she said. I wasn't the one who made the call, but I endorsed it. I signed off on it. But she does say that she never saw herself as a feminist, and she never tried to live by feminist values. So I think she's just a little confused. In addition, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, I think, she's been allegedly been blackmailed to keep a pornographic film that she made at 19 from being made public. Part of the problem with the film is that in the movie, she seduces a 12-year-old boy, which is extremely questionable, to say the least. The film did come to light in 2013 after she finally allegedly refused to continue paying the blackmailer. And even lately, she's not completely removed herself from controversy. During the pandemic, she suggested using incarcerated people as guinea pigs to test vaccines and medicines so that they could, quote, make themselves useful. It's like, Xuxa, hush.
That's a small problem, Xuxa. I hadn't tripped over that.
Yeah, that's not something you want to be saying or thinking. In her August New York Times interview that I mentioned earlier, she said she now has a better understanding of her influence and is trying to push progress in representation, the fight against racism, and beauty standards. She said that the debate about the impact of her media figure has taught her a lot about herself and society. We only learn to do things right when we see that we are on the wrong track, she said. So I think I had to go through all of this to get here. I'm not sure where here is, but I guess trying to push her.
Here's the place where she recognizes that while she did not invent the culture, where this is the beauty standard, right? And she just happened to be lucky enough to fit that template and then benefit from it. That she recognizes that by participating and benefiting, she actually also contributed, right? So there's the thing of like, and I certainly have gone through this through the last couple of years, right? Where there's this thing of like, racism's bad. And then, oh, wow, not only is racism bad, but I have inadvertently contributed to it. Yeah.
And benefited from it. Sure.
Yep.
That's something that we have to think about all the time. But in the 80s and 90s, I don't think we were quite there yet.
Oh, not at all, please. You know, it would have been the height of theoretical, thinking. To have had that conversation, that you would have to be so high to have that conversation in the 80s. And many people were, but that conversation wasn't had.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So the apology, unless you have more about Xuxa that you'd like to share.
I do. I have a little bit about this film, right?
Yes.
And so, what do I know about Brazil? I had a American politics class that focused on the Constitution, and the professor was amazed. Oh my God, was this woman amazing? Wow. It was the hardest class they ever actually studied for.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it felt a little pre-law school. And so cool, whatever. And part of the course was about the Brazilian butt lift and how that kind of came into vogue, but then how the laws around who has access to plastic surgery were formed, and basically just has to do with the empowerment of the middle class. But we'll leave that because that's not about this at all, right? So that's basically all I knew about Brazil. And I was like, well, I could talk about Brazilian waxing. I could talk about Brazilian butt lift. Let me see what's up with this Xuxa. And the film was one of the first things that popped up for me. And I was like, okay, what's this? So this film, Amor Estranho Amor, Love Strange Love, for those of you who don't speak Portuguese or Spanish, was a film that was made in 1982 by a Brazilian director named Walter Hugo Corey. Now, here's the story. Here's the movie, right? It opens up with an older lady and a young boy walking down the street, and the young boy's holding this envelope, and the old lady is saying to him, okay, now when you go inside, you ask for your mother, and you make sure that she gets that letter, and that's what you have to do, and you have a good time being with your mother, and I will see. And they get up to this mansion, and she leaves him, and he walks through the big gates and up and knocks on the door, and this beautiful woman answers the door and brings the boy in. And so it turns out that his mother is a sex worker who lives in a brothel. But she doesn't just live in the brothel. She now owns the brothel. But she's not managing it for some complicated reason. Who cares? So, of course, the boy's 12 years old. He doesn't know what's going on. We're seeing this all through his eyes. And the house is filled with beautiful women running around with flowers, setting up flower arrangements and like rearranging furniture, getting ready for a big important event. And the mother's talking to the kid about like, okay, your grandmother dropped you off. She gave you this letter. What is this? And the grandmother is basically like, whore, you owe me money. And so the mother's like, oh, why don't you just go up and this will be your bedroom in the attic. And then the rest of the movie, and the kid's name is Hugo, right? And the writer-director's middle name is Hugo. And so this is very much a story about, this is what I wish my life had been like. Or, oh gosh, I had the sexual awakening when I was 12. But the film is all about like, of course it's an erotic crime thriller. We'll get on with the story. So,
is it? Okay.
Yeah, well, according to Wikipedia, I haven't seen it because also it involves a 12-year-old boy being sexually molested by older women. And so, like, I don't want that on my search history. No. So that's essentially the movie. The women are like, oh, there's a young innocent boy here in this house of horrors. Oh, this is so silly. Oh, gosh, ha, 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 little boy. You don't know what's going on around you. Wink, wink. And then they like flirt with him. They walk around topless and not all the time, but like, you know, and then the big political men show up because remember the women were all getting the house together and making things look nice and putting flowers in places, in vases, I should say, not places. And so Xuxa plays a sex worker named Tamara. And one of the politicians, some big high muckety-muck, wants an innocent young girl who doesn't speak Portuguese, but only speaks German. Okay, whatever, Nazi lover. So Tamara is pretending that she doesn't speak Portuguese and is using, her German, right, to get into the role play with this guy. And the kid has found from the attic all these crawl spaces that go all over the house and look into every room. And so he's spying on Tamara, who he had seen topless. And the politician hears the noise and thinks he's being recorded for being blackmailed. And so he gets mad and he leaves. And then some other complicated stuff happens around the kid going back to his room. And Tamara, being frustrated because she didn't get to have sex with the politician, going up and seducing the young boy, right? Which is a scene in the movie, so it's filmed, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how graphic it is because, whatever, this is off of Wikipedia, but also there's a YouTube summary of it where they show clips from the film. And so it's a very soft kind of Vaseline on the lens kind of 1980s foreign film production, right?
Right.
So great. And the boy's mother goes up to the room and catches Tamara on top of her son. And she is not happy. And she pulls Tamara off of her son and slaps her across the face and chases her down the stairs and then proceeds to make love to her own son.
Oh, no.
Who then, the next day, is on a bus back to his grandmother's. Actually, his mom puts him in a car with a private driver. It's not a bus. And
Wow.
that is, well, then that's not the end of the film, because then they fast forward to 45 years later, where the young boy is an old man who is referred to as Your Excellency and gives off the vibe of a politician, right?
Uh-huh.
Who is donating his mother's whorehouse to a charity.
Oh my goodness.
Fini. Right? And so, sure, Xuxa was, she said, between 17 and 19. So she 19, whatever. Yeah, the actor was 12. Yeah. Like, not a scene
Okay.
I would film,
I
but
was going to say, what was she thinking?
but at the same time, I also get, like, it was the 80s, very early 80s, and it's about a young boy's sexual awakening. And
Right.
it's not like the boy is crying and screaming when Tamara is seducing him,
Right.
like, you know, whatever.
But it's still rape. I mean,
Of course. Well, I am not going to argue that, because I would quickly
Yeah.
argue myself into a prison cell, right? But different time. And in 1982, the film actually won a couple of awards. It probably was, I mean, I lived then. If I had seen that film when I was that age, everybody around me would have been applauding. Like, it would have been all like, yay, he's sexually awakened now, or something like that. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. It was different for boys than it was for girls,
yes,
right?
it was considered to be different at the time.
Yes, it definitely considered to be different at the time. Boys were rushed into sexual awakening, and girls were delayed, and didn't create any tension between anybody at all, ever.
Right.
So yes. And then, like, they only sold 4,000 copies on VHS of the film before Xuxa later, obviously, because this takes money, right? She's getting famous, and then this film is like, did do well, and, well, it did well with some critics, but it didn't, like, a ton of money. And 4,000 VHS copies were out in the world before Xuxa was able to, like, get it closed down. It's illegal to sell the film in Brazil.
Oh,
Right.
interesting.
But thanks to the internet, I'm sure you can get a hold of some
Find it.
version of it, some way. She did sue Google in pre-2017. She sued Google to uncouple her name so that when you type Xuxa, pedophile isn't the next word that appears in the search results.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so you get Xuxa beautiful, Xuxa thin, Xuxa gorgeous, Xuxa money, Xuxa pedophile. Those things don't all go together. And she lost. The Brazilian court agreed with Google, where they were like, hey, this is kind of public. And so, sorry. And that's my story of Xuxa's film. And while she's getting the heat for the scene, I will also say there were other actresses in that movie who acted with a 12-year-old child, and we're not hearing about them. So clearly she's catching the heat because she's famous.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kid grew up to be a porno actor. Who would have seen that coming?
Who would have seen that coming?
Yeah. Well, he did 2 films. I don't know if that makes him a porno actor. Just a lucky viewer who got to participate twice.
I read about his other film too. So, yeah. So I hope he's okay. Yeah. So the apology, there wasn't really a specific apology, and I don't think she ever said the words "I'm sorry." So it's more the headline to the New York Times article from August says something like "Xuxa is now sorry," but she didn't really say that. She just made statements to the Times like I didn't see it as wrong back then. Today we know it's wrong, and what trauma I put in the heads of some children. And as an explanation of the racial makeup of her program, she said in the 1980s, you couldn't find a soap opera where the maid wasn't black. It's not the fault of the Xuxa show. What's at fault is everything that was passed on to us as normal. So she was blaming culture. And she also noted that ever since I was a little girl, I was seen as a piece of meat. In her memoirs, she wrote about several moments in her childhood between the ages of 4 and 13 where she was subjected to sexual abuse. She was also told to lose weight, forced to get plastic surgery, and prevented from cutting her hair. A doll has to have long hair, she remembers being told. At the same time, she said, Barbie and I were two winners, two victorious women at a time when only men could do anything. I think that's more than being a feminist. So that's really the content of her apologetic statements. Yeah, that too. She's not a feminist.
She's better than a feminist because she made money.
She's better than a feminist. So when we look at the criteria for an apology that we look at every week, most of them, we don't have any of them. So there's not really an expression of regret. It's more implied. There's no explanation of what went wrong. Not really an acknowledgement of responsibility. She sort of blamed it on the culture of the time. There's no declaration of repentance, no offer of repair, and no request for forgiveness. So if we are looking at this as an apology, I would have to give it a 0.
Wow. All right. And so I actually gave it higher.
How much higher?
Yes. I gave it a 7. And
a 7?
Yes.
Wow.
And admittedly, she did say, I'm sorry. But at the same time, I really like her acknowledgement of her own personal responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. It's that statement of the things that she did inside other people's heads, right? That really struck me as like, wow, you're taking ownership, and you don't have to. You're obviously, money for me allows people to do whatever they want, and the minute they're actually human, they get 7s and 10s from me when they apologize. But I mean, she's made her money. She could just float along and not say any of this. But I suppose perhaps, and I don't know what's going on in Brazil, so I don't know if culturally these are big moments where this is the topic of conversation and this is something that she would only ever be asked in an interview, therefore get ahead of it. But I really like that she did acknowledge her own place in the, I don't know, situation or in the culture, right? Would she have walked away from that show and hundreds of millions of dollars? No, of course not. Would I? No, I would not. You guys are ugly and I am beautiful. Money, please. So
she's worth like $300 million today, I think.
Yes, and well, on one hand, I would stop at $3 million, right? Yeah. I am lazy. I wouldn't turn off the money machine, and neither did she. And maybe now that I think about it a little bit more, maybe. Okay, I'm going to go down from a 7 to a 4 because your analysis is correct. But I am still giving her big brownie points for taking ownership in her role, even if the culture and money forced her to do it.
Okay.
She's better than a feminist. How dare you question her?
Yeah, that's right. So then we average a 2.
Well, yeah, that feels okay to me too. That 2 feels like it. It
feels fair.
Yeah, it does, and it feels fair based on Xuxa. You don't seem to be a nice person.
No.
What is up with wanting to infect criminals with illness, and then the other thing you said, which now I can't remember.
But I'm sure it was terrible.
Oh, I mean,
she doesn't seem very smart. Is the thing, and she doesn't seem very thoughtful. She doesn't seem to really understand the feminism for one thing, and what her role in society.
Well, she's only a woman. How could she understand feminism?
Good point. So let's see. Do you have an apology expected, or who's sorry now this week?
I do have an apology expected.
Awesome.
Yes, and I have lost it. So,
well, I can tell you mine while you're
good,
looking,
please.
if you like. So for my apology expected this week, the San Francisco Police Officers Association is claiming that Reams, California, which is an Arab street food restaurant and bakery chain that has locations in the Mission, the Ferry Building, and Oakland, refused to serve a police officer last weekend as part of a supposed company policy to not serve anyone who is armed and in uniform. In a statement sent to SF Gate, Reams said its policy is meant to keep guns out of its stores as a way to ensure the safety of its employees. Reams has a deep commitment to uplifting social and racial justice in our communities, the statement said. This includes fostering an environment of safety for our staff and customers. In a time of increased gun violence, particularly impacting people of color, youth, and queer people, we believe that maintaining a strict policy of prohibiting guns in our restaurant keeps us safer. At Reams, we aim to provide a space where people can eat delicious Arab food and work together to strengthen our community without fear of violence or harassment. We invite our community to step up and join us in creating that culture of care and resilience. And I'm saying that I'm expecting an apology from Reams. I don't want one. I would prefer that they not apologize for not letting in armed officers and serving armed officers. But I expect that they will apologize because a couple of years ago, I think in 2021, we had a similar instance in San Francisco in which they did end up apologizing. So I think they will bow to the pressure of the Police Officers Association and society, maybe society in general. I mean, San Francisco used to be a place where you could say something like this and not be shamed into changing your mind, but I'm not sure it's like that anymore. So that's my apology expected.
Wow. I'm going to say, don't want to get on the wrong side of cops ever, ever. Right? Yeah. But at the same time, too.
I mean, they should be able to ban guns. Maybe the way around it is to ban all guns, not just armed officers. But not just people in uniform with guns, but anybody with a gun. I think that would be fair.
That would be fair, but that's also too logical and too easy. So we have to do something that's going to upset somebody. Otherwise, there's no point in getting out of bed in the morning if you're not going to, piss someone off.
Offend somebody? Yeah.
Yes. So I have an apology expected, and it is from the Tokyo Electric Power Company.
Oh.
Yes. So they are releasing, over the next 40 years...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
more than 500 Olympic swimming pools filled with radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And that can only not be good.
Treated radioactive water.
Well, yes.
But I don't know what that means. I don't know how you treat radioactive water. If you could treat radioactive materials, you think there wouldn't be a problem in Chernobyl.
Exactly. And so I didn't dive that far into it. There's a water pun there. Dive. Get it? Thank you. I did it. Yeah. Didn't even realize it happened till after I said it. That's how smart I am. My guess is that that won't last very long. They'll do it for a little while, and then one three-headed fish is going to appear somewhere, and then everyone's going to be like, nope.
I wonder where the water is now and why they can't leave it there. There's no way of knowing.
There's no way of knowing. This is beyond us. It involves water. That's kind of scientific. We don't know.
Yeah.
Radioactivity. We did do a program on Madame Curie, so we are sort of radiation experts. Yes. But we haven't done one on water yet. So
maybe next time we'll do one on water.
We need a diver to apologize for something.
When they apologize.
When water apologizes. I'm sorry.
I thought they actually did release some of the water. Is that not true? They're just planning on it? Or do we not have any way of knowing that either?
There's no way to know that because the article that I didn't fully read didn't have that in the first 3 paragraphs. Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone wants to write to us and tell us, we will read your email.
Or I could just send you this news article, and then you could read it, and then you could tell me.
I could Google it.
Yes.
But we're trying to get some interactivity going on here, though. So write to us and tell us. And write to us with your favorite apology, or your least favorite apology, or your most embarrassing moment, or your favorite fruit. We don't care.
Oh, favorite fruit. That sounds so interesting. No, your favorite apology.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
So great. So on that note, we'll be back next week, I think. Wait, am I going to be here next week? We'll have to talk about that off the air. Everyone have a great week. Stay cool, cucumbers, and don't trip potato chips. Thank you for listening to Apologies Accepted, the podcast.
You can find links to the articles and the sources in the show notes.
To submit an apology or find out more, visit us at apologiesaccepted.net, where you can also find our merchandise.
We're on Twitter at Apologies Accepted.
And on Instagram at apologies.accepted.
You can support our important work at Patreon.com/Apologies Accepted.
And fuck Facebook.
Bye.
Bye.